And we're finally back. We did it. A long hiatus, and we have returned.
I have reasons. Like, it's not like we were just lollygagging around. There was a
Like
lot of
Chilean
things.
miners emerging from the ground. Uh,
The, a
we
lot of
have
things happened in the past couple of weeks.
a lot of things have happened in the past couple weeks. So first, we had Black Hat and DEF CON,
Mm-hmm.
which we took the week off because anyone who's watching this was probably traveling. You
Yeah,
guys were all gone.
I was personally at DEF CON myself, along with the fact that here at GuidePoint, we held a happy hour at Black Hat earlier in the week. So if you're one of those viewers that attended any of our events out in Las Vegas 2 weeks ago, we appreciate you coming out and hope you had a good time.
We hope that you had a wonderful time. I hear that the events were a smashing success, and I am mad that I was not there. So I have yelled at my boss and told him that he needs to remedy that next year.
I will kindly raise my voice in excitement at your boss too.
Sam, if you're watching this, I am being facetious.
I'm not.
But yeah, we had that, and then last week at the last minute, we got a message from Jonathan's lovely wife that he was sick with the flu. So we had to cancel at the last minute because we couldn't find a replacement host in time. But
I apologize. I've had a rough outside of being in Vegas. I was ill the week prior. I was ill the week after. This just comes with having children. That means when they're sick, you're sick.
Yep. Little tiny vectors that run around your house and eat your food. So there is some news that we want to get to, some stories that we have to cover. But before we jump into that, we do have some internal housekeeping news to talk about really quickly, which is the fact that we have a new member of our team here, a product marketing manager, who's joining us, producer Ben. He's brand new to the show, and he's going to be helping us out. Ben, how's it going?
It's going super well.
It looks really cool, man.
Yeah, that's enough of
Thank
that.
you.
We've got a tight schedule to keep. But producer Ben, he's going to be helping us behind the scenes. He's going to have his own opinions, I'm sure. We're not going to worry about them too much. But we're really excited that he's joining us, and in time, maybe he will climb the ranks and the rungs of the ladder and join us and move from lowly producer to full-time host. We'll see. But Ben, we're happy that you're here. And then before we continue any further, the views and opinions expressed by Jonathan and myself, and now Ben, if he manages to get a word in edgewise, are our own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of GuidePoint Security. We're just a bunch of dudes talking about cyber stuff that we find interesting.
Oh, yeah. And so just to kick this off, remember everybody watching live online, this is GPS Live for the date of August 25th, 2023. For those in the future, we do appreciate that you come back and watch the recordings. We feel that this information is great now and forever. So,
yes.
Thank you for that.
And if you are watching live right now, go ahead and drop a comment. Say hi. Tell us where you're at, where you're from. And
what's your password?
Yeah, what's your password? The last word of your social, mother's maiden name, all of those things would be great. So if you are watching live, go ahead and let us know where from and join the conversation as well. We promise that we will, like we do with everyone who's not Jonathan or myself on the show, we will give full thought and credence to all of your opinions and let you voice them fully, and give you the time that you deserve.
Before ignoring them.
Before ignoring them entirely. But let's dive into our stories. We've got some fun stories. We actually have our first story. It's kind of where we're pulling from two spots here. We've got from the Hacker News and from The Verge. We're merging two stories about this. But they're back in the news cycle again, like a ghost that refuses to leave the mansion Jonathan and I have built. Lapsus. They're here again.
It's one of those things that doesn't seem to be able to go away, but this story is a little bit flipped, right? Coming to us, as mentioned, from a couple different places. There's been a lot of headway in tracking down members of Lapsus. In fact, two individuals have been recently arrested in the United Kingdom. One of them
Yep.
18 and one of them 17. People, remember that your adversaries are mere children. These are not seasoned professionals that are, going
Yeah.
to the hacker academy. These are homegrown potential threats.
Yeah, these are free range grass fed attackers. Um, yeah, thank you, Derek, for joining the show and watching with us. By the way, greetings to you in Idaho. But yeah, if anyone doesn't remember this story, I don't know how you could have missed it because it was like 4 months of the news cycle last year when Jonathan and I first started doing the show. Lapsus was a group that made huge waves with how brazen they were about the way that they were um, uh, operating, because they would basically like take down these massive companies and targets, right? They would infiltrate places like Nvidia, like Microsoft, like a bunch of others, and they would steal a bunch of really sensitive information, and then they would just publicly be like, yeah, hey, we got in, we took all this stuff, here's our list of demands. They didn't operate the way that a typical group, like a ransomware group would, where it's kept internal with the threat of release. They just came right out on Twitter and everywhere else and were like, hey, we're Lapsus, we did this. Kind of very like anonymous style,
Mm-hmm. And
Uh,
that's the part of this detail here too, is that these individuals, at least the ones in the current story right now, were initially arrested. Right? They have a bit of a rap sheet now, from everything from using social engineering to break into companies to SIM swapping techniques to break into companies, and so the main individual, the 18-year-old, was arrested back in September of last year, where he was put on conditions, part of his bail, to not use the internet. Well, this individual decided that that didn't really matter and used, according to the article from The Verge, an Amazon Fire Stick in a hotel room to
yeah.
access cloud services to upload the latest gameplay videos of the unreleased Grand Theft Auto 6, which totally spoiled it for me.
Yep. And ruined it. And I mean, don't worry though. In 5 years, when Grand Theft Auto 6 finally comes out, then you'll have forgotten everything that there was that was leaked about it. But they really made a name for themselves with the fact that they did a lot of I think, if I remember correctly, they posted a lot of like public bounties for insider
Mm-hmm.
access.
Yep.
And a lot of their stuff was actually predicated, like a lot of their capability was predicated on um, their ability to conduct effective SIM swapping. So they would SIM swap to be able to get like two-factor authentication codes and stuff
Mm-hmm.
for organizations that they could then breach. And they did things like they got into Nvidia and they stole a bunch of really sensitive files for their GPU architectures. And their demands included things like, I mean, obviously they wanted payment in crypto, but also they wanted things like the removal of features that NVIDIA had released to stop people from crypto mining using their GPUs. And then in the end, it wound up being a bunch of bored teenagers who had nothing better to do during COVID. But they've been convicted. Two of them have now been convicted in court. In London for their high-profile tech hacks, and that's two out of, I think there were over a dozen people that were arrested.
It was definitely spread across the world, right? The UK housed several individuals. I know there was also, if I recall, some from South America. Again, they took on a little bit of a different tactic where we've been aware of insider threat for a long time. This isn't necessarily a new concept to us, and especially those our viewers. This is a consideration within your organizations for what is the value of an employee to perform a task on your behalf. In this case, they were offering, like you said, $10,000-$20,000 for an
Yeah.
employee within a telco to perform manipulation services so that they could take over a particular phone number for a short period of time just to get that 2FA. And versus some of the more classic ransomware, which is like that spray and pray, right? Or targeted phishing campaigns involving links and malware. So this was really kind of ramping it up, and I'm glad to hear that the people behind this are finally starting to come to justice.
Yeah, finally starting to come down. Thank you. People are actually sharing really funny like password options in the chat for the things that they I'm worried, like I would normally show comments on stream, but I am worried that like
we'll pass on that one for now. Thank
yeah.
you for sending in your passwords. Please feel free to rotate them regularly.
Yeah, please feel free. We're coming up on Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so what better time to start talking about good things like password rotations? But yeah, that kind of Lapsus. They're back. We will continue to monitor, I guess. I don't know, for any time that they show up. I've got a Google alert basically set up for Lapsus. But speaking of Google has announced some really cool changes and new security measures. Now, I should note, I always like to do this, that Jonathan did find like pretty much all these things. Like he came into the Slack channel and just was like, here's 9 stories we could talk about, and we just picked from that. So that was really great. But yeah, what happened with Google here?
This is going to be our spin on some good news. We decided not to save it to the end, and we're doing a little bit here in the beginning. Now, if everybody remembers those classic kind of war movies, and this is kind of a real life thing where it takes 2 people to turn the key, and you can't be within reach, right? It has to be on that side of the room and that side of the room. It takes 2 admins to make a decision now in a lot of these conditions within Google Workspace. And so Google has announced that there's this really cool cybersecurity defense feature that allows teams to prevent social engineering against one particular targeted individual, right, to turn on or turn off some really critical security controls. Now it requires to be signed off by 2 admins. And this is a really cool step up versus what we see in, like, for instance, modern MFA, multi-factor authentication. Well, there's this kind of new approach called 2SV, right? And this is that like second security approach to it, right? It's 2-step verification. It is technically a form of 2-factor authentication, or MFA as a large, but this is the first time I'm starting to see something like this outside of just the war movies.
Yeah. Like I put in the headline down here, this allows everyone to enact their favorite fantasy of being 2 commanders on a submarine, right? Or launching a devastating attack. But this is really incredible to see, I think, from Google, because so many people rely on Google Workspace for critical, pieces of their infrastructure and of their business. Being able to rely on those 2. Now, of course, that this is like all things, is not a perfect solution. No security solution is perfect, right? If you don't have other basic security measures in place, then you're really not going to. It's not going to matter if you enable this, right? If you don't have basic security measures in place and 2 of your admins get owned at the same time because of your faulty security measures, right? You've instantly got that. Or if you have one, here's something that I'm wondering, and I'm gonna have to go do a deep dive on what Google is actually requiring for these workspace things. Is what if one admin account gets owned, and then the attackers use that to create a second admin account?
So there you go, right? And this is one of those critical functions where, after multi-party approval is what they're calling it, multi-party approval request is enabled and configured on a particular workspace, admins must have at least one other admin confirm a critical change. That exhaustive list of what's considered critical change is within Google's documentation. I don't have that in front of me at this time, but you do pose a good question. I would assume, here I go again, making assumptions on the internet, that adding an admin or promoting a user to an admin would be considered a critical change.
I would certainly hope that is considered a critical change. It does leave open that the initial vector of creating the initial vector of like creating your new workspace account, if you don't have 2 admins, right? If you only have the one person, relying on a second person who maybe doesn't have the experience necessary. What's up? You pointing at yourself, or are you unbuttoning your?
No, I'm on bet. I'm getting comfortable
Okay.
here. No, but I believe this is definitely tailored more towards a mature
Yeah.
environment that can support the capability of having multiple administrators to sign up on things. I mean, it's just like the good old, meeting, change request meeting, right? You bring in the proposal, and you have to have multiple people or a majority vote upon a change request to get it approved. You can't just go and make changes yourself.
Yep. And they did say starting later this year, it's going to be a phased approach. Select administrator accounts of resellers and the largest enterprise customers that they have will be required to add
Yep.
2SV to their
Very good.
accounts to strengthen their security. This article comes from Bleeping Computer, and I'm not seeing a link that goes out directly to the source that they were talking about, but we will do a little bit more. Actually, hey, this is a great thing. Producer Ben,
Producer
could
Ben.
you try and find for us really quickly the announcement of Google Workspace to two-step verification, 2SV. Ben, if you could find that and drop it in the chat, then we'll come back to this story.
Maybe we'll even allow you to come on and say something about it.
Yeah, we might even let you come on and talk about this for a second. Oh man, this is not the time for the Veterans Affairs Office to be calling me.
If you have to take it, I'll go ahead and get us jump started into the next story.
We've already missed the story. We've already missed the call. It's fine. Okay. The next one, I think that I'd like to cover. I think. Well, actually, I did the last one. You choose the next story. We got two more to do.
Let's jump into this. Everybody's somewhat free shareware version of archival software.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah. So coming to us from Ars Technica is a WinRAR ODE that is being used to kind of hide and poison different types of files like JPEGs and text files. That's been sadly being exploited since April. And for those not already familiar with WinRAR, where have you been hiding? Under a rock? This is the internet.
Yeah, I feel like I learned what WinRAR was like so early in my computer usage life cycle as a child, because I was like, "What is this kind of file?" And everyone was like, "Oh, just use WinRAR; it's fine."
So yeah, we were doing a little bit of pre-show chatting, and Tristan, it sounds like you kind of got you figured out what's going on with this particular exploit.
Yeah, this particular exploit, this is a classic kind of repackaging of old techniques that would have been used, right? But explicitly what this one is doing is attackers are exploiting a 0-day vulnerability inside of WinRAR that is allowing them to essentially it's allowing them to take a executable file, a script of or an executable file of some kind, and have WinRAR package that as like a .jpg or a .txt. So it appears to be a JPEG or a text file inside WinRAR. And then when WinRAR extracts those files, it maintains that it maintains that files. Why can I not think
the original file extension?
It maintains the original file extension that it was packaged with, and so when you double click it or when you go to execute it, it just launches that script right away. This is classic, right? This has been done numerous times before. It's definitely not as elegant as people who hide code within the actual image file itself, like appending that to the end of that's one that a couple years ago,
like what we call steganography, right? Where it's one thing embedded within another, meant to not look at.
Right. A few years back, there was one that I found really interesting where it was actually using a very specific image file format, and they were able to go in and edit the actual the actual bytes of that file, so that they actually just appended their code to the end of the code for the image file. So what the computer would actually try to interpret as the image file, it would just then continue on interpreting a script after that. So the image would load just fine, and then a script would execute in the background as part of it. It was a very specific image file for a very specific type of thing. So the computer actually had to read it as code. I think it was for it wasn't for rasterized images. I think it was specifically for
This is like classic earphone view kind of thing.
yeah, sure.
Well, either way, what's interesting about this one though is it has been actively exploited since April, and
Yeah.
so that implies that it was being used to target individuals across the internet, both different online forums as maybe like some kind of upload, resulting in that online forum to have malware land on their system, or being sent via slide into my DMs from one individual to another.
Yeah. And this is where it was classically found by the researchers who uncovered this, is they saw a lot of it in cryptocurrency trading forums, which is a incredibly popular target audience for malware, because you have a lot of people who, especially over the last couple of years, have been looking to get into crypto as kind of a way to try and make some quick money, try and do some trading. It's viewed a lot of times as like this this way that you can do trading and execute trading, potentially making a ton of money without knowing about the stock market, right? And so in those crypto trading forums, these files were being passed around and then were being executed by these traders, who then saw things like unauthorized access to their brokerage accounts with like massive transfers of their money, or access to their crypto wallets to try and steal all their coins and tokens. So interesting, like that this is, again, like we said earlier, this is not a new technique, right? Just saying a file is a different type of file,
Yeah.
and then letting it execute.
Now, there is a lesson learned, and I do want to kind of speak directly to our listeners and our viewers, is consider your, different applications that are installed on the host within your enterprise, right? It's
Right.
not just Windows or Mac OS these days, and it's not just Office either. We're talking a number of different tools that are dependent on different types of files being downloaded, brought onto the system, and then opened up and processed. And so this is just one example of being able to keep track of all that third-party applications, right? That software bill of material that applies to all of us every single day. I know I have a number of different applications on my laptop that I need to keep updated on a regular basis, and this really should apply to everybody too, whether it is WinRAR in this case or any other program that you use on a day-to-day basis outside the operating system. It needs to be updated and it needs to be patched.
Yep. And since this is a 0 day, right, we're expecting probably there will be a patch at some point, unless it's like
There was a patch released. I read
there
on,
was
on
okay.
another article that I believe earlier in August a patch was released. But honestly, when's the last time you've updated WinRAR?
When was the last time you even yeah, especially at this point, they are probably in the like 17 decimal points in versioning of WinRAR. Ben, producer Ben, did indeed find that blog for us. So Ben, did you notice anything when you found that blog? Great opinion, Ben.
Take that as a no.
Yeah. You can go to workspace.google.com to their blog, The Identity and Security Accelerating Zero Trust and Digital Sovereignty. I'm pulling it up right now. I'm obviously, in the couple minutes we have left, not going to have time to really go through and read through everything that they are doing there and what they're requiring that 2SV for, but that is a source that you can head to. Ben, if you could actually, for us, if you could drop that link into the normal comments, but you'll have to go to the LinkedIn post itself, Ben, because StreamYard can't comment to LinkedIn. So if you can drop that in the LinkedIn comments on our LinkedIn feed, that would be fantastic. Just go ahead and do that as a viewer. And then we have one final story for you guys. This one is interesting, and it's going to allow us to talk about a lot of things that we kind of are going to roll up into one. But any of our viewers are who are here regularly are going to be familiar with the GRIT ransomware report, the GuidePoint Research and Intelligence Team ransomware report that we publish monthly, and then we have a quarterly wrap up, and then we have an annual wrap up every year. And I work with the GRIT team to get that done and get that published. So when we saw a couple ransomware stories out there, we went to them for their opinions, and then I saw this one, and I thought it was really interesting as a way to talk a bit about some of the stuff around the Grit ransomware report and some of the opinions that they were offering when I talked to them earlier. This is coming to us from Dark Reading. The story is Ransomware with an Identity Crisis. So this is a new strain of ransomware that was identified very recently, that I cannot pronounce the name of, Adhub LLKA, Adhub, but it's a new strain of ransomware that has been identified. But it turns out that is actually it's been in operation since 2019, and it's been very hard to identify this strain of ransomware for a bunch of different reasons. Most importantly, like what they were pointing out is that many samples of this ransomware have been misclassified or mistagged by investigators as being some other ransomware family. So they're looking at this, and it's other names have been assigned to the same piece, like README, MMM, MME, Globe Imposter 2.0, and they just all belong to the same ransomware family, and they are the same piece of ransomware.
There's additional other things to it too, aside from the fact that it's been kind of floating under the radar now for a while, and nobody's been able to fully correlate it until recently. One of the other tricks up the sleeve of this particular ransomware group is that they demand very small ransoms, unlike
Yeah.
most of the ones that you hear about in the news and you see in other places of multi-million-dollar requests. I want $10 million to give you your files back, and so on and so forth. This particular group's typical request is between 800 and 1600 US dollars. And
Yeah.
because it's oftentimes so low, they actually have a very high success rate, being considered a minimum charge. Um, and also, it's often unreported because it seems like a low level attack. As reported by the article, victims often pay the attackers, and the attackers to continue to fly under the radar because it just gets ignored and nothing really gets reported from it.
Yeah, and they're targeting also these smaller businesses that probably don't have the resources to hire like full ransomware response. Right, they're asking for this low these low ransoms, these small payments that are much more easy to stomach for a business. Right, it might be a hit to their bottom line, but it's not going to be terrible. They can be like, oh, okay, we lost $2,000 to get our stuff back, so it's easier for them to just pay it and move on. So it's not getting caught by researchers, and it's not getting reported at the scale that we would see these other ones reported. But the reason that I found this story interesting is it's a dovetail for us into two quick things. First is the Grit ransomware taxonomy that has recently been updated. So that is Grit's system for classifying ransomware groups based on their level of activity and how new they are. And I think it's really interesting to think about that in the terms of this story, where multiple different things were being reported the same thing was being reported in multiple different ways as new groups popping up because no one was really tracking it. And that's what the Grit ransomware taxonomy hopes to address. But the other thing was that the reason that we really kind of pulled into a ransomware story was because there was a recent report that came out detailing dwell time for attackers. And Jonathan, this is one that you found. So I want to wrap this up really quickly with that story.
Yeah, real quickly, just some of the fun facts without making a whole big thing about it with the last minute. Dwell time with attackers, especially when it comes to, land and expand from different malware groups, is we're finding that it's shortening up. I mean, we're looking at almost like an average of 5 days. Historically, we've always been told within different talking points is that attackers may dwell for hundreds of days at times, right? So they're in your network and you don't even know until they finally do some kind of exfiltration or some kind of payload execution. At this point, we're starting to see a difference in the trend. It's been decreasing over the years, such that within a couple days, if an attacker is in, they're just going to begin their campaign. And this just brings a really interesting point as to what's going on. We're also finding, of course, some of the obvious attacks happen at night. And so
Yep.
when the United States is sleeping or on holidays, we've already known this from previous articles that we've talked about on the show, but we are seeing it from the research data too.
Yeah. But the interesting thing about this is I went ahead and asked I asked the guys on Grit, hey, what do you guys think about this story? And the interesting thing that they pointed out about this this Bleeping Computer article is that it's not really clear from the reporting whether that we are talking about time to detection or dwell time overall. And the reason that they were pointing out that being so important is because either way, it can indicate two really important things. So basically, if the article is actually talking about time to detection, if that's what this report is actually about, then it's really important because it means that threat actors are doing more work up front to identify EDR tools and detection tools on systems. And if they see that, they're modifying their behavior to instantly drop and get out. And that's what's going to come through with a lot of this reporting too, is because EDR tools are the ones that are going to catch these types of attacks. And if they're not seeing EDR tools, then maybe they're waiting longer to launch. But if the point of this article is actually really the dwell time, how long the attackers are on the systems, period, it's important because it means that attackers, like you said, are moving faster to try and have a bigger outsized impact. They want to move fast, hit as many machines in that network as possible, do their damage, and then get out.
It's like a bull in a china shop.
A bull in a china shop. So that brings us to the end. Singer, I know that you have some other things that you need to go take care of. I'm sure other meetings. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for GPS Live for August 25th, 2023. Thank you so much for commenting and joining the conversation, everyone. Thank you to producer Ben, our newest member of the team. All right, say bye, Ben. And so we will be back again, hopefully next week if Jonathan doesn't get the flu again, to bring you more cybersecurity news and stories. Same time, same place, 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I have been and will continue to be Tristan Morris.
And I'm Jonathan Singer.
And we will catch you next time.